For me, I'm very much, I'm here's a problem. Let's take care of it. I have a solution for that.
Our goal when we opened was to provide the highest quality care that was possible at a price people could afford.
I literally talk to physicians daily. Kelly, I can't even log in to see my own billing. I have no idea what's going on. I get a report once a month and nobody can explain it to me. I make it a point to train the physicians how to go and pull their own report.
I'm going to be on the course reporting tomorrow afternoon.
You are?
I am. I'm going to follow Jordan Spieth and Will Zalatoris and Scotty Scheffler. I'm not really reporting, but I am going to go watch the course.
Probably drink a couple beers.
Yeah, I might have a beer or two tomorrow afternoon. I mean, that would make my commentary even better.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cutting Edge Podcast. I believe this is episode number 18 already for us. And unique opportunity today. In the words of Toby Keith, we're going to talk about me. So I have a guest host, Miss Kelly Payette, going to be actually turning the tables on me. Normally, I'm the one asking questions and poking and prodding. In this instance, actually, Kelly is going to do that for me today, and we're going to actually talk about TexAssist. But before we get into all that fun stuff, I wanted to give a shout out to our show sponsors. So many thanks to Ortho Lone Star, the Carrington Group, and Tyler Talman, who Tyler's normally my co-host, but unavailable today. Certainly a shout out to Jen Eaton and all of her efforts to help us get up and online with social media and all of our digital presence. And a shout out to Gordon Highlander. So my buddy Greg Gordon, also known as Gordo, is going to be joining us here in a couple of weeks to talk about corporate culture and building a culture of excellence. You can find us a lot of different ways. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter. You pretty much can find us everywhere with the exception of TikTok and Snapchat. I'm too old. I'm too old for that.
Aw.
Maybe I'm too conservative. Maybe that's probably a better word.
All the kids go to millennials these days.
Yeah, my daughter loves TikTok and Snapchat and all that fun stuff.
Now you're seeing parents get into it. I think we're going to have to start doing TikTok.
Kelly, I can't even imagine us doing TikTok.
We're going to have to do one right here on the show. That's what we're going to do.
Well, there ain't going to be no dancing or singing from this pair.
Oh, that's
so I'm going to hand it off to you since we're reversing roles for today's episode. So let's let it roll.
Awesome. So I've known CJ for many, many, many years and has been a great friend. And he is always wanting to talk about other people. So the other day we were talking and I said, CJ, let's talk about you. And I knew he would love that. And so I said, well, I'm going to come on and be the host and let's talk about you and your company and what you have going on. So we're here today to talk all about you. So tell me about your company, TexAssist.
Yeah, well, we started back in 2013. So technically by name, we are TexAssist Surgical Assist Staffing. So it's a mouthful, but TexAssist for short is our brand. Most people know us as a surgical assistant staffing company here in the DFW area. Mm-hmm. We have done some work in a few other metro areas in Texas, but just kind of dabbled. Most people don't even know what a surgical assistant is. You want me to talk about that?
I do. I want to get all into it today.
Okay, so a surgical assistant is a trained professional that works up alongside the physician in surgery as the second set of hands. So what most people don't know is that surgical assistant oftentimes plays a critical role in that surgery being performed safely and effectively. Mm-hmm. And insurance companies normally pay for that person. In fact, Medicare and Medicaid and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services dictate that most surgeries require a surgical assistant for the patient's safety. So an unheralded critical member of the operating room team, that's the role that our staff fills. So we help match up qualified staff with surgeons who need the support.
Yeah, so I'm a former orthopedic administrator, and we personally use CJ services, and it was wonderful. So kind of just following up with what CJ's saying here is surgical assistants are very much needed in the OR. A surgeon can't do all of the things they need to do on certain procedures like total hips without a skilled and highly qualified surgical assist. And so for some of the people listening today who don't know how important it is, it's a very important need for a lot of surgical practices. So how do your services compare to others in this space?
Well, I am not a surgical assistant. I'm a business guy. I've grown up in the healthcare business, been in the space since 2004. I think a huge differentiating factor for us as an organization is that we're not run by surgical assistants. But as a business owner and as an executive, I have operating room experience. So I worked as a surgical device rep as part of my prior experience. So I actually have experience with surgical instruments having been thrown at me. Not necessarily for anything that I did, but so I have experience having worked in the guts of the hospital and up alongside the physician from the device standpoint. But really what makes us unique is my folks don't have to worry about the administrative side of the business. They can be purely focused on delivering outstanding clinical care and being focused on taking care of that physician and that patient. And we have all the staff and all the back office to deal with engaging with the patient prior to surgery, being able to deal with the insurance portion of this, deal with hospital administration and credentialing and all of the non-clinical aspects of what goes on in this healthcare business, because it's a lot. It's very complex what happens outside the operating room. And I think people wildly underestimate just how complex it is. I think one of the greatest benefits of how we've structured our company and what we've heard from physicians is they never have to worry about getting a call from us at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you tomorrow. I actually just got your message that you needed help. But my staff has to be somewhere else." If we can't help them, we're getting to their staff usually by early afternoon. We're communicating at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to troubleshoot. So by the time everybody goes home at 5 o'clock, it's in the books, it's rock solid for the next day. And our risk of having something go uncovered or there being something that falls through the cracks is essentially zero.
So, that brings me to another good question that, we want to let our audience know. Whether I'm a physician's practice or a hospital, and we'll kind of get into those details later, how do I connect with you? How does the relationship work? Is it a contract? How do we notify you? Let's get into how seamless the process is to work with you and your group. So tell me how that happens.
Sure. I think one of the things we've worked really hard on, Kelly, and this just comes with experience over the past 8 years, is I'm not really big on contracting with independent physicians or private practice physicians in terms of locking them in to having to use my people. I like preferred provider agreements, but I don't like trapping people. If we aren't doing our job and my people clinically aren't delivering the care that they're supposed to, then that physician should be able to take his needs somewhere else. Our business is unique in that sometimes we're contracted with the hospital, sometimes we're contracted with the insurance company, sometimes we're out of network. The easiest thing is that we lay out a pathway where when the physician's staff schedules the surgery with the hospital, we simply ask them to add our staff to that communication chain. So most of the time that's coming through secure eFax, it's coming through secure email. We get carbon copied on that communication, so we get the same set of information. We then go to work on matching up a qualified staff member that has the requisite experience at that facility to make sure that we have them available for that case or series of cases. And then we turn around and we communicate back to the physician's office and let them know who it's going to be, what time they're planning to show up, if there's going to be cross coverage, what's that plan, and then we start to communicate with the patients from there. So in no instance is there ever a situation where our staff is showing up to cover surgeries where the physician doesn't know who's coming, the patient doesn't know that somebody's going to be in there, and the patient hasn't heard from us at least once to know how the whole billing and financial aspect of this is going to work. I mean, it's as transparent as we can make it from start to finish. It's critical.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. So when I was administrator and we used CJ services, it was all very transparent and smooth. So I couldn't tell you, we were onboarding physicians almost every year. We would bring on a physician. And, these services are for a physician that has 2 PAs, but a PA can't work because they're on maternity leave. Or this is for physicians that are new and are to the point they don't really need a full-time PA yet. CJ's group was always really good about covering the cases. We would have last minute add-on cases that our PAs wouldn't be able to cover. Or again, we had a PA go on maternity leave and we couldn't get assists anywhere else. And so CJ's, team, he would always have the manpower and the experience to come cover our cases. And so I think that's very important for our audience to know, is that, kind of like to his point, you don't have to sign this very, stringent contract where you can only use him and him only. This is a hybrid model where you can have your own, NPPA or OPA and still use TexAssist services. And so I think that's very important to point out. So tell all the administrators, I know why you and your company are great and how much you've helped in the past, but tell all the surgeons, administrators of either hospitals or clinics who are listening to today's show, why should they choose your services beyond what I just kind of explained?
Yeah, I mean, look, the number one thing that I default to is clinical excellence. We take a tremendous amount of pride. I'm going to tell a little story. A tremendous amount of pride in the quality of people that we have working for us in terms of clinicians. And I go back to 2013 when we started this business. So it's 4th of July, and I happened to be out to play golf and ran into an orthopedic surgeon that I'd known for 6 or 7 years. And the previous year, we had talked about this surgical assist business. And I kind of approached him and said, hey, what do you do? Who do you use? And he was kind of grumpy, and it wasn't a good fit at that point. But he saw me again that morning and he said, hey, look, I'm still having problems. Are you in this business? Like, what are you doing? And I said, hey, I've never done anything with it, but we could put some resources together pretty quick, if you're still having issues. And he said, yeah, let me get back to you next week. And he called me the following week and he said, hey, look, I got 13 of us that all have this same common problem. We can't get consistent coverage. When people do show up, they're not terribly well trained. I'm always teaching people how I like things done over and over. So we went from having no business on the 4th of July to covering our first surgery with 5 full-time assistants working for us during the first week of October of that same year. So literally in 3 months, we put this whole thing together and we were providing service for 12 surgeons. I say that because those 12 surgeons handpicked those 5 surgical assistants that came to work with us initially. And they handpicked them not based on their personality, not based on their looks, not based on how much they were willing to be paid. They handpicked them based on their ability to perform. And that is the number one criteria that we use day in and day out with our staff. Now, that does not mean that we don't miss every now and then. We have had assistants that have come in, they pass all the checkpoints, right? They have good references. Surgeons have a good experience, but somehow something gets missed and they're just not a good fit, right? It happens. We're in the staffing business. But I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, the people that we recruit into our organization have 10 plus years of experience. They have thousands of cases under wing, and they're far and away superior clinically to most of their peers in the marketplace. So that's the number one thing I would point out.
Awesome.
Right? It's the clinical excellence that we carry through. And now we're starting to deal with value-based care arrangements where physicians are starting to be measured on outcomes, and part of that outcome measurement is readmission rates, specifically related to surgical site infections and things of that nature. Our provider type now starts to play a role because our provider type is mostly responsible for wound closures. So you better start looking at who you have and what's the tie to SSIs. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would mention that I would say really makes a huge difference between us and everybody else is just purely our infrastructure, right? And it's happened with intent, but it hasn't happened overnight, right? Most surgical assist providers or groups are very small, and they're very much, I hate the term mom and pop, but that's really what they are. It's how they think. They're very reactive. They're not proactive. They're not set up to function at scale, or to function highly efficiently. And we've done things to really build our business to function with high efficiency, especially in the ebbs and flows of the surgical business. And I will tell you, in the last 18 months, we have seen wild swings in, okay, we're open for elective surgery. Nope, no, we're shut down. Oh, we're open. Oh, no, we're shut down, right? And our infrastructure has allowed us to be consistent in having great quality back office support, where we don't add any more stress to the surgery scheduler's job or to the practice administrator's job. And I think that's been critical to why we've been successful.
Awesome. And so true. So true. Well, talking about all the changes that are going on in healthcare, we're going to kind of divert from services to how it's changing TexAssist.
yeah.
My goodness. We've had so much change in the last year with just COVID and the No Surprise Act. So let's dive right in. Tell me, in the last year with COVID and everything, how has this changed your business? And what do you think the future is going to hold?
Yeah, well, I talk about changes first. Prior to COVID, so let's go back to 2019. Really, in the beginning of 2019, we were exclusively orthopedics and spine. We loved what we did in orthopedics and spine, but I felt compelled to spread our wings a little bit. I wanted to be more of a multi-specialty group, but still be well-grounded in orthopedics and spine. So we started to we had an opportunity to serve the cardiothoracic market through a contract with Baylor at the end of 2019 is when it started. And we were doing quite well when COVID hit. But one of the things that COVID caused us to do is really, really accelerate our plan to add other surgical specialties that were more non-elective. So as you know, Kelly, orthopedics it's elective most of the time, right? Unless you're dealing with orthopedic trauma that could be emergent or urgent. 95% plus of orthopedics is elective. It doesn't have to happen today. It can happen 3 months from now. So in this whole process with COVID, we actually have seen 35% of our business divert away from orthopedics and into specialties like colorectal, urology, surgical oncology, reconstructive plastics, cardiothoracic, where it can't wait. And it's been a huge blessing in disguise for us because it's helped keep the economic engine going, but it's also helped us recruit a totally different type of provider. So now we're taking professionals that have an equivalent amount of experience, but now we're dealing with professionals that have tremendous laparoscopic experience, deep pelvic and abdominal surgery experience. There is no case, I'm not going to say there's no case. There are very, very few cases that could be sent to us by a physician's group or a hospital that we couldn't comfortably staff at this point. I could not say that 18 months ago prior to COVID really moving into our economy.
Wow, so that's a good thing that COVID brought to you and your company. And
yeah,
so
I think, clinically, that's been a huge win for us. I think economically, COVID has caused us to sharpen our pencil. Let's be honest. The surgical assist space, whether people know it or not, the surgical assist space has been dominated by out-of-network providers and activity, and us being no different. We've always billed out-of-network. That's just how things have always been up until the last 9 months. And I think COVID gave us a chance to take a breath and look at the landscape and say, how do we want to change the conversation? How do we want to change payer engagement when it comes to our provider type? Because historically, nobody's ever been in network, or very, very few people, not even remotely close to there being enough providers in network to meet the needs of all the members that are out there. So I think that's been a huge blessing, that we've been able to sit back and look at our financial model and our business model. And we have begun a massive shift in how we do business, which I think is going to pay tremendous dividends as we go into 2022. And in fact, it's starting to show signs of that happening now.
So I think this goes to show, your leadership and your business acumen. A lot of people, practices, and companies like yours, they crumbled. They're either hurting really bad or they crumbled, but you took something very bad, because I know a lot of those orthopedics, they did cancel their cases and they couldn't do procedures for 9 or 10 months, right? And so I think that goes to say about how strong of a business person you are to actually find something that has developed you into a much larger entity, and that is awesome. So I know there has to be some things though that it really made you change, and you kind of just brushed on it just a little bit. So
yeah, so I will tell you that one of the things that people in our space, again, being smaller shops, boutique shops, being prepared with financing and being prepared to weather storms economically, but then also being prepared with capital to grow, has never, ever been really well thought out in our business. Thankfully, we were in a really good spot going into the pandemic where we were able to arm up and put ourselves in a position where we could have some internal borrowing capacity to never have to lay anybody off, never have to cut salaries, and maintain through this. Right now, that doesn't mean that we've not taken on any debt, but we've intelligently taken on debt, right? There's a place for debt when you do it smartly. And we felt like we've done that to this point, to where now we're positioned to start to have others join us and then begin to take advantage of economies of scale operationally with how we built our infrastructure. But most importantly, begin to have honest conversations with physicians groups and hospitals and healthcare systems about how the economics of the surgical assist business are going to work going forward. Because you asked about the No Surprises Act. It's absolutely going to impact our business. It's already started to impact our business, whether people know it or not. And it's going to have a huge impact come January 1st. I, as a professional and as a leader, it has forced me to get way outside my comfort zone. But I feel so much better prepared for what's really going to come at us come January 1, because now we're going to switch gears again. And, for administrators, and I'm going to speak to all of you as administrators and physicians that may be leaning into this, and even surgical assistants. If you think nothing's going to change January 1st with surgical assist coverage, you're fooling yourself. I can tell you that right now. I mean, I have spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort engaged in the legislative side of this, and also now with legal counsel unpacking all of the rules that are coming down from CMS and HHS. There are massive changes coming. So whether you have mid-levels in your office or you don't, and you rely upon outside help for surgical assist support, I think it's important that you pick up your head with us having essentially 75 days left before January 1st to figure out what you're going to do come January 1, because the rules are changing. And better to be prepared and have options than to not be prepared and end up having to panic. And that's kind of where we take the next step, I think, as an organization and as an industry, is start to unpack, okay, well, what does that mean?
So if we are using your services, or if we are not, can you educate us on how to be prepared? So for instance, I probably don't know. I know enough about the No Surprise Act, right? But I don't necessarily know how that may affect now mine and your relationship. So tell us what we need to be doing to help you.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you the number one impact with the No Surprises Act to the surgical assist business, Kelly, is that providers are essentially being shut off from being able to bill out of network, even with the patient's consent. So if we're going to an in-network facility, even if the patient consents for us to bill out of network, it doesn't matter, right? That's the legislation, the language that has been handed down has essentially said no more out-of-network billing in that scenario, because we are a secondary, we are a recipient of a referral from the primary referral driver in an in-network facility. So if that's the case, and you're not contracted with the payer, what happens now? You got to get paid by somebody, right? So who are you going to go talk to? Administration at the hospital doesn't want to talk to a single provider. I mean, Kelly, you were an administrator for a 6-man orthopedic group. Imagine how little administration wanted to talk to you guys, right? And you guys were one of the bigger orthopedic groups on the campuses where you operated. Now imagine being a little old surgical assistant trying to go into the administration office, where even if you can get there, they're not going to talk to you anyway, right? So now it's like, okay, well, that one's out the window if I'm an independent person. So guess where they're going first? They're going right to the physician and saying, Doc, you need to pay me. Well, what's the doctor going to say? Well, hell, I don't get paid enough. So how am I going to pay you?
Yep.
It's not my responsibility to pay you. You go figure it out. Okay, well, that just puts you out further on the island, right? And then the deal is, okay, well, I'm going to charge your patient. Oh, no, you're not going to charge my patient. You can't charge my patient. They have insurance for that. What now? Right? So these are all things that we got to have open, honest conversations about how the hell we're going to design around this. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no options. But I think as a group, there's strength in numbers. There's a reason why you see mega groups forming in orthopedics and colorectal surgery and urology and primary care. Man, it is not by mistake. It is by design, right? We're after the same thing. We're not here to crush the surgical assistant's ability to have control over their life or over their financial situation. What I'm after is to be able to have enough headcount to have some leverage to negotiate on behalf. I essentially want to be the agent for providers in our industry. Because if we don't do that, we're all going to get crushed. Because there's power in numbers. So my estimation is we still don't have 100% visibility on where this is all going. In fact, CMS is not required to have final rules in place for January 1 until December 1st. Right? So good luck. If you think you want to wait till December 1 to try to figure out what your options are in 30 days, and you got Christmas in there and you got New Year's and you got to go buy Christmas presents, and oh, by the way, it's the busiest month of the year in surgery after we basically haven't done much surgery in the last 12 months.
So can you share with us what TexAssist plan is, planning for that January 1 date?
Yeah, I mean, we have been, so for those that don't know, I have 2 full-time business development executives that I've chosen to invest in to go out and have meaningful conversations with physicians groups, with physicians, with hospital administration, with payers, right? Like, we are contracted with one of the big 4 payers. I think we're awfully close to being contracted with a second of the big 4 payers of BUCA, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, right? We have to go down that road, whether we like it or not. So our model is really hybrid, right? Like, we are not choosing any singular path, right? We're choosing to attack on multiple fronts, and it allows us to be reactive based on the particular engagement. I think we're 24 months until we really see the dust settle and there be a pattern of behavior that emerges in the DFW market. What's very interesting to me is that the pattern of behavior has already emerged in Houston. The health systems are taking the lead in Houston. We have not necessarily seen that happen here in Dallas. It's still very fragmented. So whoever can figure out how to create a pattern of behavior and has some horsepower to almost force a pattern of behavior or narrow down the number of choices, I think ultimately is going to end up being the winner here. So from TexAssist, from our standpoint, we're trying to push the conversations. We're trying to push for, these are the options. Now let's start to take some of those options through pros and cons off the table so we ultimately get to a decision. And again, I can sit here and pontificate all day long about what I think is going to happen. But I think everybody's needs are a little bit different too. I think by specialty, the needs change. I think by geography, the needs change. I think by whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit, from the facility standpoint, the needs change. I think whether you're employed or you're private practice, I think the needs change. I mean, holy cow, let's just introduce a couple more variables. What the heck? While we're having fun with it.
For sure. Let me ask you, have you had any good feedback from payers? I mean, it seems like nobody really is, even these these big groups coming in.
Oh no, for sure. Like we've had fantastic feedback. So currently we're contracted with Cigna, and we've been contracted since late first quarter of this year, and we've had enough claims run through that we are super happy with how that's turned out. Awesome. Right? It's become our template for what we're asking for from the other payers. Without giving too much away, we are engaged with one of the two largest payers in Texas and nationally, and we're making progress. Like
Good.
there is mutual interest in us getting a deal done. It's not a one-way try to pigeonhole us into something that's purely one-sided, right? That's traditionally been how this has worked between payers and providers. It's very one-sided. I don't feel that way at all. In fact, I'm very optimistic that something good will come out of this that will benefit surgical assistants across Texas. It's not just going to be limited to DFW. That's one of our goals. It's actually one of the things that we were able to accomplish with Cigna is that it's for all managed care plans statewide, which allows us to operate functionally a lot differently than traditionally anybody has.
Okay. So we know how it works with payers. We know how it works with physician offices. How does it work with you in hospitals? So if we have a hospital administrator listening and they want to provide, better quality of services to their physicians, which in turn to their patients.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we have a couple different options for how we can plug in with hospitals, whether it's, case rate, whether it's hourly rate, whether it's monthly stipend. Every hospital is a little bit different. And I threw out the for-profit versus not-for-profit models because the drivers of the conversation change when we deal with for-profit versus not-for-profit. Is it more important to predict expense, or is it more important to have adequate staff and manpower available so patient and physician experience is really optimized? I think we can move in really about three different directions here. The commonality amongst all of our hospitals that we have contracted with thus far, they all figured out early on that if they bring a group like ours in that meets the clinical threshold for being able to meet their excellence standards, it becomes a tremendous recruiting tool for physicians to put it on autopilot and know that they don't have to worry about this aspect of it anymore.
Awesome. That's smart.
So and again, like I said, what's happened in Houston is the health systems in Houston, they figured it out before what's gone on up here in Dallas, which again, it's a matter of time. I think those that pick up their head and realize that they can use this as a recruiting and marketing tool, as well as a clinical service tool, are those that are going to start to pull ahead. And you're going to start to see procedures, especially as the No Surprises Act goes in place. You will see a procedural shift. You will see behavioral shift based on this service line availability for physicians.
Awesome. Interesting. It's all very interesting with the dynamic, just healthcare market changing so rapidly. And it's unique to see how all the different healthcare entities, whether it be physician practices, corporate owned hospitals, independent owned hospitals, or companies like yours, how we're all trying to just see what's going to keep changing in healthcare and to keep our heads, above water. And
Yeah,
so
I
it's
mean,
very
the only constant in healthcare is change.
That's so true.
that's
So
really
true.
it's I feel like we've been in a blender for the past 36 months.
Oh yeah, I think everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
So, tell the audience today, how can they reach you to learn more about TexAssist?
Yeah. So, look, you can reach out to me directly via email, cj@TexAssist, TexAssist.com. I'm going to throw my phone number out there too. Maybe it rings off the hook. Maybe nobody ever calls me, but 972-979-6222 is my cell phone number. I'll answer any call, right? I take calls from patients. I mean, this is my business. This is what I do. There is no, as a business owner, you work sun up to sundown. You can also visit TexAssist.com. You'll find our corporate number there, and you can talk to one of our staff and eventually get to me. But those are the easiest ways. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there too.
CJ, for all of you guys who don't know, and I'd be his number one reference, worked with him for many years, he is always available. Whether it be you message him on LinkedIn or you call him, he's always available. I think everybody around him would say the same.
Yeah, sometimes too available, according to my wife.
I'm sure most of you listening already know him well. But his company offers great services. It's really good for a lot of physicians out there. So definitely, even if you just want to learn, contact him to learn more about how he can help. And then it's also always just good to network and get with great business-minded people like CJ to learn and to grow. So
yeah, no, I mean, look, I think whether it's relative to surgical assisting, I mean, this business, Kelly, is about who you know.
it is.
Right? I mean, you never know when somebody is going to need something, and it may not be a good fit today, but it might be a good fit someday. And sometimes leadership change or change in payer dynamics, people come and go, right? I mean, nobody's going to hurt my feelings if I make a pitch and they go, no, that's not right for us. We're going to go in a different direction. I mean, that happens every day. I had a longstanding physician that we've worked with for it feels like forever, that I had that conversation over the weekend. He said, look, for right now, I need to do something different. And I'm like, hey, look, I appreciate the opportunity to have served you for that many years. And I have no doubt in my mind that we'll probably end up doing business together in some way, shape, or form going forward. But that's the nature of this business, right? Like, we take care of each other, and just it's important to us that, we call it the TA way, right? It's the methodology that drives who we are and how we work. And we drill it into our staff weekly in terms of the personal touch. And if we were on the other end, whether it was the physician, the scheduler, the patient, anyone, a vendor that walks in our door to replace a light fixture, right? Like, how would you want to be treated?
Yep, and I can speak, on your behalf for that. I mean, if CJ is the owner of his business and you call him to scream and yell at him about an upset patient or whatever, he's going to take your call and he's going to say, I'm going to turn things around and make your patient happy, and he always does. So him and his team are great. So, and you're right about the networking. It was the number one thing that my mentor told me many years ago, is that know everyone around you, because the people matter, right? You may not do business with somebody today, but you're going to cross paths with them, and you're going to do business with them sometime later in life, or it's going to become a friend. And so it was one of the great lessons. And obviously that's what I think anybody who you connect with somehow becomes your friend, because you just have that, you try to treat everybody respectfully. And then, obviously your business helps a lot of us in this healthcare world out. So it's very appreciated. And it was good to learn all about it. Anything else you want your audience to know today?
Yeah, look, I think a departing thought from me is, whether you're listening to this and you are in a position of influence or a position where you're making the decision or not, if you feel like this is something that could help your organization, speak up now, right? Like I've always been an advocate of, it's better to have had the conversation and discuss and discover that you don't need it, or it's not the right time, or it's not a good fit, than to leave it lay and it ends up coming back to bite you in the rear end. Because I think that's where we're headed. I think a lot of people have kind of put their head in the sand and kind of buried it. And I have a feeling, and I've already told my wife this. I said, look, I'm not planning on going anywhere for Thanksgiving, even though my family has a place in Gulf Shores for 2 weeks. We're not going anywhere for Christmas, and I don't plan to go anywhere for the first 3 months of next year. Because I just instinctually think that this legislation, when the hammer drops, there is going to be massive ramifications for our business and for everybody that uses our provider type.
So speaking to that and kind of ending on that, for the audience listening, not just administrators, but hospital administrators, what about investors? Are you looking for anybody to come and help invest in what you're doing? I know you mentioned financing earlier. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're always open to those conversations. I think the biggest thing right now that we're looking for, the SBA, interestingly enough, has some good products that fit opportunities for M&A. Mm-hmm. It's the old adage, it takes money to make money. So having been bruised and battered and beat up over the past 18 months, like anybody else that's in the elective surgery or in the surgery business or the healthcare business in general, there's very few people that have come out of this in a better position than when they started. Let's be honest, right? It's probably the lab people, people in diagnostics, maybe people selling hospital beds. COVID testing. But there's a lot of people that have either been run out of business or they've really been pushed to their max. I mean, we're really no different. So right now we're looking at some bridge financing, and there are things that are contingent upon other things. But again, I've used all of this downtime to educate and prepare myself for what I think is going to be a wild run in consolidation for our business over the next 2 to 4 years. So I'll leave everybody with this thought. I think what's going to happen in our business is going to be very much like what's happened in anesthesia over the past 10 plus years. So if you think back 10 years ago, what drove anesthesia? Small boutique shops. Really, you never saw many shops more than 10 anesthesiologists, and that was a big group back then. What do you have now? You have monster groups. Guys that took advantage of economies of scale, guys that took advantage of being able to grow in provider size, where they could reduce cost, they could drive quality experience. I think we're kind of headed in the same spot because there's economic pressure on our provider type, just like every other provider type in the food chain. So yeah. I think that's what I'm looking at. Again, I love talking to people. I think God's going to direct the conversation. He's going to make the right person appear at the right time for the right reason. And all of this is going to fit together, right? Like my wife sees me every day stress about this, and she reminds me every day, God's got this. Like, yep. He has a plan. And I have to allow my faith to drive my action and my interaction with people and to live my faith outwardly as I run this company. Because it's very easy to do the opposite and let it slide and move into the background. And then you end up making a fool of yourself, and God ends up picking you up anyway off the turf. Yeah.
Guys, we got to remember, we always have to support one another, especially in the trying times with healthcare. Again, saying that networking matters. We all can't read all the languages of every single article that's posted by Medicare or the government or whoever, or Optum. So we all have to kind of come together, help each other. And then, great things will come because there's people out there, like CJ, who's not going to stop until he overcomes this and see what, the new law brings. And so, again, CJ, thank you for allowing me to steal the show today to be your host. And it was great to talk about you and TexAssist.
Well, and I will tell you, everybody, tune in. If you're listening to this, share that come October 21st, we will have 2 Facebook premieres back to back. One with Josh Weaver speaking on Stark Law changes coming, especially those impacting physicians groups, with January 1 changes. And then we're going to have a Facebook premiere with Chris Reed from Weaver Johnston Nelson talking about the implementation of the No Surprises Act. And it's going to be a lot bigger than just talking about surgical assistance. So it ought to be a wild couple of podcasts there talking about major changes in legislation and impacts on healthcare providers. So
We're gonna have to do a TikTok after that one.
we're gonna have to, I'm gonna need a good stiff cocktail after those.
So
Holy
y'all gotta
smokes.
tune in. I'm gonna get them to do a TikTok.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
Well, Kelly, thanks for doing this with me. To our audience, thanks for tuning in. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Certainly join us on LinkedIn and our Facebook communities. And we'll see you next week.